channel. My name is Carly. I am a mama of 2 little girls. I share motherhood and lifestyle content here on YouTube, as well as cleaning motivation and daily vlogs. So if you're interested in those kinds of videos, I would definitely love it if you would subscribe and stick around. I also post a lot on my Instagram, so definitely go follow me on there to get updates on YouTube. I post a ton. I'm really active on there. We do polls, we do all kinds of fun stuff over there, giveaways. So without further ado, I'm going to get into this video. As you can see by the title, I am going to answer a lot of common breastfeeding questions, as well as telling you my personal experience breastfeeding. So, little disclaimer, I am not a lactation consultant and I am not a professional, but I have been pregnant or breastfeeding for over 4 years now. So I definitely think I have some advice to give, and I think I could answer a lot of these questions. So just to give a little backstory, I have a 3.5-year-old daughter and a 14-month-old daughter. I breastfed Charlotte, my 3.5-year-old, until she was 18 months old, and I actually got pregnant for Zoe, our youngest daughter, when Charlotte was 15 months old. So I breastfed while I was pregnant for 3 months, and then I am still currently breastfeeding Zoe, who is 14 months old. And it has been a journey, I will tell you that. It was not easy at the beginning. It still has days where it is not easy. And I just want to let everyone know that fed is best. It is not the end of the world if you can't breastfeed, but give it your all. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. Formula is still there for you for that reason. So your baby's gonna be perfectly healthy on formula, just as well as it is if they're breastfeeding. Obviously, everyone knows in this day and age the benefits and the nutrients that babies get from breastfeeding. So, but I don't want you to think that if you can't breastfeed, if you're not successful in breastfeeding, that it is the end of the world, you know? Okay, so with Charlotte, I'll give a little backstory. When she was first born, I tried really, really hard to breastfeed. She was not, at the first couple hours after she was born, she tried to latch on a couple times, but she was really struggling and I wasn't too worried about it. But after that, once we got into our recovery room, it was a lot harder because I could not get her to latch on, especially on my left side. So the nurses and stuff gave me nipple shields and I put those on, and those helped a ton. I highly, highly recommend those if you have smaller breasts or it's your first time breastfeeding. I don't think I had an inverted nipples, but I think I had it. My boobs were very, very small before I got pregnant for Charlotte. So once I had her, they're just it was really hard for her to latch on. So once I started using those shields and we left the hospital, I had already had my full milk supply in. I was already engorged by the time we left the hospital. I wasn't using the shield on the right side anymore, but on my left side, I used it for almost, I think, a full 2 weeks. Another big thing with Charlotte with breastfeeding is my boobs were very small, so I was always engorged. Even though I don't think I had an oversupply of milk, I was so engorged because there wasn't any room for the milk. So I had a very, very heavy letdown, and it was very strong. So Charlotte would often pull off and cough and choke because the milk was coming out so fast. But eventually she did get the hang of it and she didn't choke on the milk as much. I would say I didn't have a lot of pain nursing Charlotte. I think that the nipple shields came into play there though. I think that they kind of protected me from getting super raw. I did use a lot of coconut oil and stuff to make sure that they weren't getting cracked, but even if you use that, you can still get cracked nipples a lot. They recommend that you breastfeed your newborn every 2 hours, but I breastfed both of my girls on demand, and that's what worked for us, because I feel like on demand, they're gonna cluster feed. You're already used to that kind of, if you're already breastfeeding on demand. So once they go through cluster feedings and everything, that's what I was used to, was already feeding them whenever they wanted. That also went along with my girls both ate in short 10-minute increments. So, and that's because my milk let down so fast, so they became very quick eaters. And they would eat I'm not kidding, like every 45 minutes to an hour. And yeah, that sounds really exhausting, but once you get the hang of it, it's just like you like whip it out, feed them, and then they're good to go, you know? So I would say I leaked while I breastfed both of my girls until they were both about 6 months old. I would get really engorged and leak, and I didn't have a haka, which is a little like hand pump thing. It's not really a pump, it catches your letdown on your other side while you're nursing the baby on the opposite side. And I did not have one of those. I don't even think they had them when I had Charlotte. It was in 2016, but I would just put a burp rag or a cup or something and catch that letdown. I would highly recommend not a burp rag, like catch that liquid gold in a cup or get a haka. That was like seriously the best investment. I had a haka when I had Zoe, and I seriously stashed so much milk just from nursing her on the opposite side and catching that letdown. I stored so much freezer milk. Oh, okay, so fast forward, after you make it through that extremely hard, painful 2 weeks, then it gets a lot easier. You get into a routine. You understand that you need like a gallon of water beside you while you're nursing your baby, because you get so thirsty. It gets a lot easier. So I always recommend people to try to stick it out for that 2 weeks, because it's hard. It's not like it's something that comes naturally to everyone. I think that is rarely the case. And you definitely need to be educated before you jump into it, because it can be really frustrating and really discouraging if you don't understand that it is not easy for everyone. So next I want to talk about not weaning, but once she started on to whole milk. So when Charlotte was about 11 months old, 10 and a half, 11 months old, we started giving her a little bit of whole milk, and she loved it. So that really kind of helped me a little bit, because we knew we wanted to start trying. We started trying, I would say, when Charlotte was like a year old, and I got pregnant when she was about 15 months old. So maybe not a year. We tried for like 3 or 4 cycles before we got pregnant for Zoe. So 3 or 4 months. So around a year old, I stopped nursing Charlotte completely on my left side because there was nothing left. It was literally like she was just nursing, and it hurt because there was no milk in there, because she rarely nursed on my left side the entire time I was breastfeeding her. She always favored my right side because that was the side I was most comfortable with, so I made a ton more milk on that side. And even though she wasn't equally nursing, she was still getting plenty enough milk because my right side compensated for the lack of milk I made on my left side. With both of my girls, I never struggled with my milk supply. There was times where I got discouraged and I was like, it seems like they're not getting enough milk, why are they not happy, stuff like that. But a lot of those times, they were just cluster feeding, trying to make my milk supply go up, or I was taking something, like I took a cold medicine when I was pregnant for Charlotte that I thought that said it's breastfeeding safe, but what they didn't tell me is like I took that for like 2 days, that's it, and I was like almost dried up. I could not make milk and I was so confused. I went to my doctor and he's like, stop taking that can dry up your milk supply. Stop taking it. Literally the next day I was filled with milk again. So there are things that you need to avoid when you are trying to breastfeed, because it can diminish your milk supply for sure. And I'm also going to talk about the things that can help boost your milk supply that I personally used. So after Charlotte was 15 months old, I was still nursing her, but I got pregnant for Zoe. So that was a really hard 3 months. I was very, very sick with Zoe, and I think that was just on top of being tired and stuff, already raising a toddler, chasing her around, and nursing her. So once Charlotte was about 18 months old, I tried when she was 17 months and she just wasn't ready to wean. And when she was 18 months, for some reason in that month, she nursed a lot less. And one day I realized I hadn't nursed her the entire day. And so that night when she asked for it, I said, I'm sorry, honey, it's gone. And that's how I weaned her. And she's just like, all right, peace out. Like, she was fine. But if I would have done that any sooner, she totally would not have been okay with weaning. But she also had her passy and she was obsessed with it. So that was her comfort more than nursing. So on to Zoe's breastfeeding story. I had only been, I was already pregnant, or I was Okay, so I didn't have that much of a break between breastfeeding both of my girls. I think, what was it, like 6 months that I was pregnant without breastfeeding Charlotte. So when she was born, like my boobs were just ready to go. Like she was ready to nurse, and she latched on right away, and she nursed for about 30 minutes right after she was born. Like she literally just latched on and didn't let go. They had to take her off so we could like go into our recovery room and stuff. So she was super easy to get to latch on and everything. It was not hard, but the hard thing, and I think that's because I was comfortable and I was already, my boobs were just ready to nurse another baby because they hadn't taken a break for that long, you know. But what was hard with her is I had such dry, cracked nipples with her that I could have screamed every single time she latched on for like the first month. I was bleeding. It was so terrible, and I don't know why. Like I used that mother nipple balms. That was so painful, and that's why I think when I used the nipple shields with Charlotte, it kind of protected me from that. Also, Zoe had a very small mouth, and she had a really shallow latch. So even though she was getting enough milk, she had such a shallow latch that I was in a lot of pain when I nursed her until she got a little bit bigger. So after the 2 weeks, like I said, or after about a month with Zoe, it started to not be as painful, but then I started running into the struggles of getting mastitis. I've had mastitis 3 times since nursing Zoe, and that is because of my oversupply. When she was not even a month old, I think she was about 2 weeks old, I had over 100 ounces stashed in our freezer. And I know, like, for some people, they're like, wow, that's amazing, like, lucky you make enough milk, because unfortunately there's a lot of people who don't make enough milk. But it's also kind of like a catch-22. You make enough milk for your baby, but you're also constantly engorged. Your baby is constantly choking on milk because you have so much, and you have to pump, and it's really hard to kind of like make that balance of like, you're not supposed to pump because it's gonna increase your milk supply, but if you don't pump, your baby can't eat because you're so engorged that your boobs are too hard. And it's just like, I was pumping so much because I was like, wow, this is amazing, I have so much milk. I didn't make enough to pump with Charlotte. I made enough for her and then a little bit extra from like my letdown stuff, but with pumping, I didn't get a ton. With Zoe, I was overflowing the bottles, and for the first couple months that was amazing, and then I was like, wow, this is exhausting. I don't want to pump anymore. I don't want to make this much milk. And I kind of did that to myself because I was pumping so much. But she nursed like crazy, and she still does. She's 14 months old, and I swear that girl can nurse every 45 minutes if I let her. I'm trying to narrow her down because we do want to start trying again. Not like right this second, but in the near future we want to start trying again, and I really don't want to be pregnant and breastfeeding again. Like, if you can do that, you're amazing, you're a superwoman, but it's just not for me. So I am trying to like start the weaning process, but we'll see how that goes. So my 3 bouts of mastitis were terrible. That's another reason why a lot of women quit breastfeeding, is because mastitis literally feels like you have the flu, on top of feeling like if you just like barely touch your breast, it is so painful. So mastitis can also be like a big cause of it is from a clogged duct that gets infected, and you get clogged ducts. I can't even talk. You get those clogged ducts from being engorged and stuff like that. So what was really confusing to me is, like, I understood the first 2 times I got it because I think she was only a couple months old the first time. The second time she was like 6 months old maybe, and then the last time she got it was just a couple months ago. And so I was really confused as to like why I got mastitis again, but I did, and it wasn't nearly as bad as the other 2 times, but it was from a clogged duct. And that's because I still do get engorged if I don't feed her for a few hours, and I typically don't really feed her on my left side because, just like with her, she favors my right side. So I only feed her a couple times on my left side versus the right side I feed her a lot now. So I think that probably is why I got it the last time. Okay, I also wanted to talk about spitting up. When your babies spit up, after nursing. I feel like a lot of moms freak out about that because it seems like it's a lot of milk. In my girls' cases, Zoe never spit up. She probably spit up a handful of times, like maybe 5 times in the whole 14 months of her life of like from nursing. Charlotte, on the other hand, spit up every single time she fed until she was 8 months old. I tried cutting things out. I tried dairy-free. I tried cutting coffee out. I didn't have coffee. Like I would try it a few times here and there until she was 8 months old, but I didn't start drinking coffee like again really consistently until she was 8 months old. So, and none of that helped. Charlotte wasn't having projectile vomiting, like she wasn't spitting up. She didn't have acid reflux. She wasn't spitting up like projectile-y. She didn't have acid reflux. She was a very happy baby. She wasn't colicky. So I didn't believe that she was just like in pain and stuff. She literally just spit up and she'd move on. Like it wasn't something to be of concern, and her doctors also weren't concerned because she was gaining her weight consistently. I believe that she was doing that because my letdown was so strong and she would chug it like as fast as she could and then like spit up the milk that she didn't need because she ate too quickly. So those are my stories with both of my girls. I do believe I was blessed with being able to breastfeed them both like relatively easily, but I also was very educated in it. I grew up with a mom who breastfed all of her kids except for my oldest sister because she was 18 when she had her and she didn't know anyone else who breastfed. She tried really hard and she really wanted to, but she didn't know how, and there wasn't really any information out there on it. Once she came along to have my brother, which was only like, I think they're 22 months apart, there was already lactation consultants in the hospital. There was books about it. People were just getting back on the breastfeeding train and were understanding like the benefits and that it is not something that just is easy and comes naturally, and you should definitely do your research. But yeah, I was very educated in it. I also talked with the lactation consultants at the hospital when I had both of my girls. Not when I had Zoe. They were like, girl, you know what you're doing, do your thing. But with Charlotte, I had all the questions in the world. I was constantly asking my mom questions. I had a lot of support in it, and I think that is very crucial as well. You need to have lots of support and lots of education on breastfeeding. I recommend everyone take a breastfeeding course because I did, and that helped me tremendously. Also, look into your insurance and see if they provide you a breast pump because ours did, and so that's really helpful because those are very expensive. But now I'm gonna get into the questions, like common breastfeeding questions that people have, and I'm gonna try my best to answer them. So first was, is it common or is it okay to have an uneven milk supply, and is it common? I think it's very common and it's completely okay as long as you're producing enough milk. My left side was always my slacker side, and my right side I always weighed way more, and that is because both of my babies favored nursing on my right side. Is it okay if your baby doesn't latch right away, and what should I do? Yes, it is okay, and it is extremely common. I don't think it's very common for a baby to just be able to like latch on right away. Zoe, she was easy to get to latch on. Zoe was very easy to get to latch on at first. Charlotte, on the other hand, didn't latch on for real for like hours, and I still worked on her latch for weeks after she was born, and I had those nipple shears, and I worked my ass off to get her to be able to breastfeed. Using cabbage to dry up your milk. So I can't speak on this personally. I have heard that people use it to dry up their milk or to like help relieve engorgement and stuff, but I've never done that personally, but I've heard people do it and it works. Fenugreek and beer to boost your milk supply, and also oat milk. So I never used like fenugreek. I tried like lactation cookies and stuff when I thought my milk supply was dropping, but like the lactation cookies, and I think those have fenugreek in them, and also beer, I can attest to that. I always feel a boost in my milk supply after I drink a beer. So I don't think there's any like scientific facts behind like beer boosting it, but personally I feel a boost in my milk supply after I drink a beer. Is it normal to have a letdown when you hear a baby cry? Yes, I still will go to the store and I won't have the girls and like my milk will let down and I'm like, oh, I hear a baby crying. Like, it's not even like I'm thinking about it. It's like my body just reacts. Is it common to have abnormal menstrual cycles while you are breastfeeding? And this one is 100% true in my opinion. In my unprofessional opinion, it is true. Because with Charlotte, I didn't have my first cycle until she was 10 months old. And then I think I only had, they were very abnormal, and I think I only had about 2 or 3 before I got pregnant with Zoe when Charlotte was 15 months old. So it was very hard to pinpoint when I even ovulated. It was really hard to figure out my due date with Zoe because they were like, well, when is your last period? And I was like, I don't know. They're like all over the place because I've been breastfeeding. And so they were like, oh yeah, so we'll definitely just have to do a dating ultrasound. We can't go by like your last menstrual cycle because even if like your ovulation could be delayed, all kinds of different things. So yes, it's definitely abnormal once you're breastfeeding, your menstrual cycle is. With Zoe, on the other hand, she's 14 months old and I still haven't had a menstrual cycle. And it's starting to kind of worry me. I'm like, I know I've looked up and people were like, yeah, my kid was like 15 months old before I got my period back. But when you have a baby already and that you got it when they were 10 months old, and then like your baby now is 14 months old and you still haven't got it, it kind of like makes me worry. But yeah, it definitely is starting to worry me because I haven't had one and we really want to start trying, and like you can't until you start your period. So I mean, you can ovulate before your first period, but I don't even know if I'm gonna have that first period anytime soon. So yes, it is very common to have abnormal periods while you're breastfeeding. But I think that is all of the questions I'm going to answer. I hope I covered everything. If you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments and I will try to get to them. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of stuff. And like I said, I'm not a professional. I am not a lactation consultant. This is just from my personal experience of breastfeeding 2 little girls I've been breastfeeding since Charlotte turned 3 in August. So for over 3 years. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.